More on this, we're now delighted to be joined over the telephone by our guest, Dr. Ayman Ghoneim, our economic and legal expert. A very good afternoon to you, Doctor.
Good afternoon to you, madam, and to all our audience.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for your time this afternoon. Now, Egypt is set to chair the Badea board in 2027. What specific strategic priorities do you see Egypt championing during its leadership term to enhance specifically Arab-African cooperation?
Well, actually, the Egyptian economic diplomacy under the leadership of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has been calling on the international financial organizations to try to adopt new risk management frameworks and to try to cater to the needs of the developing countries,
yes,
especially in upgrading their infrastructure, in financing the trade, in financing the economic empowerment projects, and most notably in financing the projects that are related to the climatic changes and the structural amendments and the structural coping with the climatic changes.
Yes.
I believe that with Egypt now chairing or Egypt will chair the bank, the Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa. I believe Egypt will have an opportunity to apply and to show an example of what it holds and what it reaches, despite the fact that this bank is not a very big bank. Actually, you have to understand this. The paid-in capital of this bank until now, I believe, is $5 billion US, and its assets are around $5.6 billion US. I think the loan exposure presently is around $3.6 to $4 billion.
Right.
And the bank, since its inception, I believe it financed projects of around $15 billion US since its inception.
Absolutely, Doctor.
It would be a very good opportunity for Egypt to show an example of the principles that it has been preaching under the leadership of President Abdel Fattah.
Yes, indeed. Now, with the bank focusing on issues like technical support, capacity building, etc., what are some of the primary sectors, for example, such as infrastructure or energy, where Egypt specifically sees the most potential for immediate development and collaboration?
Well, actually, again, as I told you, the most important sector that Egypt is now focusing on for the development of the African and for the development of the developing nations are the development and upgrading of the infrastructure, of course, the development of ports, of trade corridors, development of the projects that will
yes,
foster economic enablement, and the development of the structural amendments and the structural reformation in order to cope with the climatic changes. I believe also a very important sector that now Egypt is focusing on is the deepening of the industry and localizing the inputs of industries. And I believe Egypt will try to foster projects throughout the African nation to show an example of what the success in deepening the industries could lead to in developing nations.
Absolutely. Dr. Ayman, of course, with Egypt's commitment to enhancing intra-African ties, inter-African trade, how do you see, the coordination between Egyptian banking institutions simplifying this target of financing exports to sub-Saharan Africa?
Well, actually, there are a lot of things to be done to foster the intra-African trade. Unfortunately, till now, the intra-African trade is around 11% of Africa's international trade, as compared to around 50 to 60% in Asia and 60 to 70% in Europe. And one of the reasons is that most of the African countries are exporters of raw material and they are importers of finished goods. And also that the African economies are so much tied with the Western economies since the colonial era. Of course, African countries have been trying to do something. They have been trying to overcome such shortcomings by increasing their industrial output, by trying to deepen their industries, and by developing their infrastructure. But there are a lot of challenges, of course, for these efforts, and the most important of which is the availability of finance and the fact that most of the big financial international organizations, multilateral development banks, most of them, they need to upgrade and update actually their risk management and evaluation frameworks in order to understand the needs and requirements of the developing nations.
Absolutely, Doctor.
That's why when now Egypt is trying to foster an increase in the intra-African trade, that's not isolated from the attempts of Africa to increase the share of industries in its GDP, to deepen industries and to diversify industries also, and to try to export finished goods rather than raw materials. Therefore, these projects should go side by side. But again, I'd like to assert the fact that such leadership of Egypt and the role of this bank would be an example of what can be done, because the means of this bank is limited, unfortunately, to $5 billion.
Absolutely. Dr. Ayman, a very important issue you raised is the role of the private sector. How do you see the Egyptian companies and contractors practically benefiting from the bank's funded projects across the continent?
Well, actually, the Egyptian construction companies, they have very good reputation across the continent, and they can benefit from the projects financed by this bank and by other projects. They can benefit because, first of all, there's good reputation. Their old reputation in the African continent, and here, of course, I'm talking about very big contracting companies. I don't want to name them, but very big contracting companies that participated in the construction of Africa, especially in the post-colonial era. That's one thing. And the second thing is that Egypt has a lot of competitive advantages to offer in terms of the services of its contracting companies.
Yes.
Of course, the proximity, the geographical proximity, that's one thing, the cultural proximity, and also with the depreciation of the Egyptian pound, the reduction in its value. Of course, this led to an inflation in Egypt, and they all suffered from such inflation, but this gave a huge competitive advantage for the Egyptian factors of production, including labor, and including the fees, the consultative fees that can be levied by construction consultants. And therefore, it's expected that in the coming period we will see more cooperation between Egypt and Africa, especially in the construction and contracting industries, and especially also that the big construction process that was pioneered by Egypt during the leadership of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, it benefited the Egyptian contracting companies and helped them to acquire a lot of experiences, and it became an example to the developing nations and especially African countries.
Absolutely right. We'll leave it at that. We've run out of time. I'd like to thank you very, very much, Dr. Ayman Ghoneim, our economic and legal expert. Many thanks, sir, for your time and your insight. Moving to